The crisis. On the planet Zoreth, chaos reigned. The sky was dark, filled with ominous clouds that rolled in like a storm. The people of Zoreth were scared. They had just received terrible news. Their beloved princess, Lyra, had been captured by the cruel Gorgon Empire. This empire was known for its ruthless warriors and advanced technology. They took what they wanted and showed no mercy. Lyra was more than just a princess. She was a symbol of hope for her people. The royal palace was in disarray. Guards rushed around, shouting orders and trying to calm the panicked citizens. In the grand hall, King Alaric paced back and forth, his face pale with worry. He loved Lyra dearly and could not imagine what she was going through. "We must send someone to rescue her," he declared, his voice filled with determination. The advisors nodded, but fear lingered in their eyes. Meanwhile, far away on Earth, the news of Lyra's capture reached Commander Jake, a brave and skilled soldier of the United Earth Forces. He was known for his courage and quick thinking in battle. As he sat in the command center, the screen displayed the image of the alien princess. Her beautiful face was filled with fear and despair. Jake felt a tug at his heart. He didn't know Lyra personally, but he knew that she represented something greater: peace and unity between worlds. The commander stood up, clenching his fists. "We cannot let her suffer. We must save her," he exclaimed, drawing the attention of his team. The room fell silent, and all eyes turned to him. The soldiers looked at each other, uncertainty in their eyes. They knew the Gorgon Empire was powerful, and this mission would be dangerous. After a moment of hesitation, one of the soldiers, Private Maria, spoke up. "If we don't act, she may never be free again. We have to try." Her voice was steady, and it gave the others courage. Jake nodded, feeling the determination spread among his team. The team gathered around a large table. Jake laid out the details of the mission. Lyra is being held in a fortress on the planet Gorgon 7. The fortress is heavily guarded, and we will face many dangers. But we cannot let fear stop us. He pointed to a map showing the fortress's location. "We will land outside the fortress and use stealth to get inside. Our main goal is to rescue the princess and bring her back safely." As they planned, Jake felt a mix of excitement and anxiety. He knew this would be the toughest mission yet, but he also felt a strong sense of purpose. The team discussed their roles. Maria would handle communication, while others would focus on combat and strategy. They equipped themselves with the latest technology and weapons, ensuring they were ready for anything. Before they left, Jake spoke to his team. "Remember, we are not just fighting for Lyra. We are fighting for peace between our worlds. If we succeed, it will show that humans and aliens can work together." His words inspired them, and they all nodded in agreement. As the spaceship soared through the stars, the team prepared for what lay ahead. The ship's engines roared, and they felt the thrill of adventure. Outside the window, the universe was a beautiful sight, but they all knew the danger they were heading into. After hours of travel, they arrived at Gorgon 7. The planet was dark and foreboding, with jagged mountains and dense forests. The fortress stood tall in the distance, a giant structure surrounded by high walls and armed guards. Jake's heart raced as they approached their destination. The team landed their ship in a hidden area, far from the eyes of the Gorgon soldiers. They stepped out, feeling the cool breeze against their skin. Jake looked at his team. "This is it. Stay focused and follow my lead. We can do this." With that, they moved silently toward the fortress. As they neared the walls, they could hear the sounds of guards talking and laughing. The fortress was alive with activity, but they had to be careful. Jake led the way, crouching low and using the shadows to their advantage. They found a side entrance, a small door that was poorly guarded. Jake glanced back at his team, signaling them to stay quiet. They quickly slipped inside, and their hearts pounded in their chests. The air inside was stale and cold. They moved through dark corridors, avoiding detection. The flickering lights overhead created an eerie atmosphere, and every sound seemed magnified. Suddenly, they heard footsteps approaching. Jake's instincts kicked in, and he quickly motioned for everyone to hide. They pressed themselves against the walls, holding their breath. A group of Gorgon soldiers passed by, talking loudly and unaware of the danger lurking nearby. As they disappeared, Jake felt a rush of relief, but also a growing sense of urgency. They had to find Lyra and get out before it was too late. The longer they stayed, the greater the risk of being discovered. The team moved deeper into the fortress, determined to rescue the princess. With every step, Jake's thoughts were on Lyra. What was she feeling? Was she scared? He promised himself that he would bring her home. As they continued their mission, the tension grew. They were in enemy territory, and danger could come from any direction. But Jake knew one thing. They had come too far to turn back now. The fate of the princess, and the hope for peace, depended on their success. The rescue plan. The atmosphere inside the fortress of Gorgon 7 was thick with tension. Shadows danced along the walls as Jake and his team crept through the dimly lit corridors, their hearts pounding in unison. They were close to their goal, but they knew the real challenge lay ahead. Finding the princess was only the first step. They also had to get her out safely. As they navigated the fortress, Jake led them to a small room filled with control panels and screens displaying various parts of the fortress. It was clear this was a command center, and it was mostly empty. Jake looked at Maria, who was still managing their communication devices. "Can you find out where they're keeping Lyra?" he asked, urgency lacing his voice. Maria nodded, her fingers dancing over the controls. "I'll try to tap into their security feed. Just give me a moment." The room was silent except for the soft clicks of her fingers and the low hum of machinery. Jake felt the weight of time pressing down on them. Every second they spent here was a risk. Finally, a flickering screen showed the image of a cell. In the corner sat Princess Lyra, her delicate features twisted with worry. "There she is," Jake exclaimed, pointing at the screen. The sight of her, alive yet trapped, reignited the fire within him. "We have to move now." Maria zoomed in on the security layout. Her cell is on the other side of the fortress. It's heavily guarded, but I can see a maintenance tunnel that leads there. It's not in use, so we might be able to slip through unnoticed. Jake nodded, quickly turning to the team. "All right, everyone. We have our route. Let's stick together and be quiet. Maria, lead the way." As they moved through the fortress, they came across various guards, their voices echoing off the walls. Jake reminded his team to stay alert and keep their heads low. The deeper they went, the more they could feel the weight of the fortress pressing down on them. But the thought of rescuing Lyra pushed them onward. After what felt like an eternity, they reached the entrance to the maintenance tunnel. Jake signaled everyone to be quiet. The tunnel was dark and narrow, with damp walls and a low ceiling. They crawled through carefully, each soldier's heart racing with anticipation and fear. "Stay close and keep your voices down," Jake whispered. The only sound was the faint scurrying of small creatures and the distant clanking of machinery. They could feel the tension in the air, knowing that at any moment they could be discovered. As they crawled, Jake's mind raced with thoughts of Lyra. What had she endured since her capture? Would she be frightened? He felt a mix of determination and guilt. They were risking their lives for her, but she also represented something greater, a bridge between humans and aliens. They had to succeed. Finally, they'd reached the end of the tunnel, peering out cautiously. The area before them was dimly lit, with guards patrolling outside Lyra's cell. Jake's heart sank. This would not be easy. He turned to the team. "We need to distract those guards to get inside. Any ideas?" "We need to wait for the ship to stabilize before engaging the drive," Maria said, glancing at Lyra. "How are you holding up, Your Highness?" Lyra took a deep breath, her eyes bright yet filled with concern. "I'm fine, thank you. Just a little overwhelmed. But I need to help you. I can't let my people take revenge on you for my escape. Jake turned to her, admiration flooding his chest. You're brave, Lyra. But right now, your safety is our priority. We need to get you to a safe place where we can plan our next move. Suddenly, the ship shook violently as a laser blast struck the hull. Alarms blared, and Jake's heart raced. They're firing at us, he shouted. Maria, what's our status? We're losing power to the rear shields, Maria yelled, her fingers flying over the controls. I can reroute some energy, but it won't hold for long. Do it, Jake ordered, his voice steady even as panic threatened to creep in. We need to outmaneuver them. Can you take us into that asteroid field? Maria looked at the screens, calculating their path. It's risky, but it might give us the cover we need. Then let's do it, Jake said, determination fueling his resolve. He turned the ship sharply, entering the field of asteroids. The view outside was chaotic, with massive rocks tumbling through space. Jake navigated with precision, avoiding collisions while keeping an eye on their pursuers. The enemy ships followed them into the field, laser beams lighting up the darkness. Jake gritted his teeth, focusing on the path ahead. Stay sharp, everyone. We need to lose them in here. Lyra held onto her seat, her eyes wide with fear and excitement. I've never seen anything like this, she exclaimed, a mix of awe and terror in her voice. Just hold on, Jake shouted, dodging a large asteroid that spun dangerously close. The ship shuddered as another blast hit, but the shields held strong for now. Almost there, Maria called out, her brow furrowed in concentration. If we can get through that gap, we might be able to lose them. Jake glanced ahead and saw a narrow passage between two massive asteroids. It was risky, but they had no choice. Here we go, he shouted, steering the ship toward the gap. As they raced through, the ship scraped against the rough surface of the asteroids. The sound was deafening, but they managed to squeeze through. Jake looked back, heart pounding as he watched the enemy ships try to follow, but they were not as nimble. Yes, they're getting stuck, Maria cheered, a smile breaking through the tension. Jake allowed himself a moment of hope. Keep moving. We need to put some distance between us and them. Just then, another alarm blared, indicating a breach in the hull. What now? Jake asked, panic rising in his chest. Life support systems are failing in the rear section, Maria shouted, her fingers frantically working the controls. We need to seal that part off before it spreads. Seal it, Jake commanded, taking a deep breath. We can't afford to lose any more systems. With a hiss, the bulkhead closed, sealing off the damaged section. That should buy us some time, Maria said, breathing heavily. Lyra looked from Jake to Maria, a mixture of worry and gratitude in her eyes. You are both incredible, she said, her voice sincere. I didn't expect humans to be so brave. Jake felt a warmth in his chest at her words. We're not just brave. We're determined. We won't let your people down. Can you navigate to the nearby planet? Lyra asked, her eyes shining with hope. It might be safe there until we can regroup. Jake nodded. Maria, plot a course for the nearest planet. We'll rest and figure out our next move. As they emerged from the asteroid field, the ship felt lighter, the threat of pursuit lingering behind them. Maria set the course, and Jake eased off the throttle. The ship glided into the vastness of space, the stars twinkling around them. Once they were in a stable orbit, Jake turned to Lyra, who was staring at the screen displaying the planet below. What will happen if we land? She asked quietly. We'll find a place to hide, Jake assured her. We can contact the Galactic Council and explain everything. They'll understand. But what if they don't? Lyra asked, her voice trembling. What if my people want revenge? Jake reached out and placed a hand on her shoulder. We'll find a way to make them see reason. It's not just about you. It's about all of us. Together, we can find a path to peace. Lyra nodded slowly, her fear beginning to fade as she found strength in his words. As they discussed their options, a rustling noise in the bushes caught their attention. Everyone froze, eyes wide, ready for anything. "What was that?" Maria whispered, gripping her weapon tightly. Jake moved closer to the sound, heart pounding in his chest. "Stay back. I'll check it out." Suddenly, a small creature darted out of the underbrush, its bright eyes wide with curiosity. It looked like a cross between a rabbit and a lizard, with vibrant scales and soft fur. Lyra gasped, her fear replaced by intrigue. "It's adorable," she exclaimed, reaching out a hand. The creature sniffed at her cautiously before hopping closer. Lyra smiled, her warmth drawing the creature in. "It's not dangerous. Look." Jake relaxed, a small smile creeping onto his face as the creature nuzzled Lyra's hand. "Okay, maybe we don't have to worry about every sound in the forest," he said, laughing softly. As they watched Lyra bond with the little creature, the tension of their situation lifted, if only for a moment. It reminded them all of the beauty in their surroundings, a contrast to the danger they faced. "Let's try to enjoy this time while we can," Maria said, watching Lyra interact with the creature. "We'll need our spirits high for what lies ahead." Jake agreed. They had survived against the odds so far, and with determination and teamwork, they would find a way to protect Lyra and their future. Under the stars and surrounded by the sounds of the unknown, they settled into their temporary home, ready to face whatever challenges awaited them in the dark corners of space. The Council's Dilemma. The next morning, Jake awoke to the soft chirping of the creatures outside their makeshift camp. The sun filtered through the leaves, casting gentle patterns on the ground. Lyra was still asleep, curled up beside the small creature that had joined them the night before. "Looks like she found a new friend," Jake whispered to Maria, who was already up and checking the perimeter. Maria smiled but kept her voice low. "It's good for her to have something familiar. We all need comfort in this strange place." Jake nodded, feeling a wave of protective instinct for Lyra. They had faced so much danger together, but her safety was now even more critical. "Let's gather supplies and prepare for our communication with the Galactic Council. We need to make sure Lyra's story gets out there." After a quick breakfast, they decided to venture a little further into the forest to gather fruits and other supplies. As they moved cautiously, Jake remained alert, aware of the hidden threats that could lurk nearby. Lyra, despite the uncertainty, was excited to explore the alien world. "This tree has the best fruit," she exclaimed, pointing to a cluster of bright blueberries. "They're delicious and will give us the energy we need." Maria was skeptical. "Are you sure they're safe to eat? We don't know how they might affect us." Lyra smiled confidently. "I've eaten them before. Trust me, they're fine." After some hesitation, Jake and Maria each took a few berries, their curiosity piqued. The taste was sweet and refreshing, giving them a boost of energy for their tasks ahead. As they gathered more food and supplies, Lyra spotted a clearing that looked promising. "Over there," she called, leading them to a small stream. "We can refill our water supply here." Jake watched her, impressed by her resourcefulness. She was not just a princess, she was a survivor. As they filled their containers, they began discussing their plan to reach the council. "Once we're ready, we should set up the communication system back at the ship," Jake said, glancing at the gathering clouds above. "We don't want to be caught in the rain." "I can handle the tech side," Maria said confidently. "Just give me some time, and I'll ensure we have a secure link to the council." As they returned to the camp, the small creature followed closely, its curiosity evident. Lyra laughed, delighted to have made a new friend in this unfamiliar land. Back at the ship, they got to work. Maria busied herself with the ship's communication systems, while Jake and Lyra kept watch. Hours passed as they worked in harmony, the tension of the previous days slowly easing. "Jake, I'm almost ready," Maria called out, her voice excited. "I think we can contact the council now." "Great. Let's set it up," he replied, a sense of urgency creeping back into his thoughts. They needed to get Lyra's message across before it was too late. Once everything was in place, they gathered around the communication console. "Are you ready?" Jake asked Lyra, who nodded, her expression a mix of determination and fear. "I'm ready," she said, taking a deep breath. "I need them to understand." As Maria pressed a few buttons, the screen flickered to life, showing static before clearing to reveal a stern-looking alien face. It was a member of the Galactic Council, renowned for his wisdom, but also for his strict adherence to the law. "Counselor Thrawn," Lyra said, her voice steady despite her nerves. "I am Lyra of the Starry Realm. I request your urgent attention regarding my abduction and the attack on Gorgon 7. Thrawn's eyes narrowed, and Jake felt the tension in the room grow. "Your presence is unexpected, Princess. Why should we believe this is not a ruse?" "Because the human soldier, Jake, risked his life to save me," Lyra exclaimed, her voice rising with emotion. "I was taken against my will, and I am in danger. The very existence of our worlds hangs in the balance." "Humans are not to be trusted," Thrawn replied, his tone dismissive. "They are primitive beings with no place in our advanced society." Jake stepped forward, anger surging within him. "With all due respect, Counselor, I'm standing right here. We've been attacked and are just trying to protect Lyra and ourselves. If you don't act, you could lose everything." Thrawn's expression shifted, contemplating Jake's words. "And how do you propose we trust you? What evidence do you have?" Maria quickly pulled up the data from their ship. "We have recordings of the attack on Gorgon 7 and information about the hydro weapons. The threat is real, and we can prove it." Thrawn examined the information presented. After what felt like an eternity, he finally said, "We will review this data. But understand, the Council cannot take sides without sufficient proof." Lyra felt a pang of desperation. "I can prove my identity. If you send a ship to investigate, you will see the truth for yourself." Thrawn considered her words, and the silence hung heavy in the air. "Very well, Princess. We will dispatch a vessel to your location. However, know that if this is a trap, there will be consequences." "Thank you, Counselor," Lyra said, relief washing over her. "I won't let you down." The transmission ended, leaving them in silence. Jake turned to Lyra, a smile breaking across his face. "You did it. They're sending help." Lyra grinned back, her spirit lifting. "But now we must prepare for their arrival. If the threats still exist, we can't let them catch us off guard." Maria nodded, her focus shifting back to the ship. "I'll check the systems and ensure we're ready to leave if we need to." As they gathered supplies and made the necessary preparations, Jake couldn't shake the feeling that they were still in grave danger. The clock was ticking, and they had to remain vigilant. Together, they faced the unknown, ready to fight for their survival and uncover the truth behind the threats that loomed over them. The unexpected betrayal. The days passed with an uneasy calm, but Jake, Lyra, and Maria remained on high alert. The small creature had become a comforting presence, but the danger still lingered in the air like a dark cloud. They spent their time preparing for the arrival of the Galactic Council's ship, while also keeping an eye on the horizon for any signs of trouble. One afternoon, while Maria worked on enhancing the ship's defenses, Jake and Lyra sat by the stream, discussing their next steps. Lyra was excited, but Jake sensed a shadow of doubt in her eyes. "What's wrong?" Jake asked, trying to catch her gaze. "I'm just worried about what happens when the Council arrives. What if they don't believe me?" she replied, her voice shaky. "You have to trust them," Jake said, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "You're a princess. Your word carries weight. Besides, we have evidence." Lyra nodded but still looked uncertain. What if they turn against us? Humans aren't exactly held in high regard. Before Jake could respond, Maria called out from the ship, "Guys, you need to see this." They hurried back to the ship, finding Maria staring at the screens with a look of disbelief. I'm picking up multiple ships on the radar. They're coming in fast. Jake's heart raced. Are they council ships? Maria shook her head. No, they don't match any of the council's designs. They look like raiders, and they're heading straight for us. Lyra, we need to move, Jake said, urgency flooding his voice. Get to the ship and prepare for takeoff. Lyra didn't hesitate, sprinting toward the ship as Jake and Maria quickly began shutting down non-essential systems. Can we defend ourselves? Maria asked, her fingers flying over the controls. Moments later, a massive ship loomed into view. The Galactic Council's vessel was sleek and imposing, its presence a stark reminder of the power it held. As it docked alongside their ship, Jake felt a knot tighten in his stomach. They're here, Lyra said quietly. The trio gathered in the ship's main chamber, awaiting the arrival of the council representatives. As the docking procedures completed, the ship's hatch opened, and several figures stepped out. Among them was a towering alien with sharp features and cold eyes, the council's chief envoy. Lyra stepped forward, her back straight and her voice strong. Chief Envoy Zalrek, thank you for meeting with us. We have important information regarding the attacks on Gorgon 7 and the recent raider assault. Zalrek eyed her with suspicion. Princess Lyra, we are here because you claim to have vital information. But know this, if you're misleading us, there will be consequences. I understand, Lyra replied. But the evidence we have will prove that the threat is greater than you realize. Zalrek motioned for his aides to approach. Very well. Present your evidence. Maria activated the ship's holoprojector, displaying the footage they had gathered. The images showed the raider ships, their coordinated attacks, and evidence linking them to the earlier attack on Gorgon 7. Jake and Lyra took turns explaining the significance of each piece of evidence, highlighting the danger the raiders pose not just to them, but to the entire galaxy. As the presentation continued, Zalrek's expression shifted from skepticism to concern. His aides whispered to one another, clearly unsettled by what they were seeing. These raiders are far more organized than we initially believed, one of the aides said quietly. This could be a serious threat to the Council's security. Zalrek raised a hand to silence them. He turned his gaze toward Lyra. This is compelling evidence, Princess. But why should we believe that the humans are not responsible for this chaos? Jake felt the heat of Zalrek's stare, but Lyra remained composed. Because humans have always been seen as an easy scapegoat. But as you can see, the raiders have been attacking indiscriminately. They don't care about species or alliances. They're after something bigger. Zalrek considered her words carefully. And what do you propose we do about this? Join forces with us, Lyra replied without hesitation. The Council cannot defeat this threat alone. The raiders are growing stronger, and they won't stop until they've conquered everything. But if we work together, we can stop them. Zalrek remained silent for a long moment, weighing his options. Finally, he spoke. Very well. I will take this matter to the full council. But make no mistake. If you are wrong, if this threat is not as serious as you claim, you will be held responsible. Lyra nodded. I understand. The chief envoy turned to leave, but before he did, he gave Jake a cold glance. Human, you may have been fortunate up to this point, but know this, your actions will be closely monitored. Do not step out of line. Jake met his gaze without flinching. Understood. As the council delegation departed, a weight lifted from the room. The showdown was far from over, but they had taken a crucial step toward revealing the truth. Maria let out a deep breath. That was intense. Do you think they'll actually listen? Lyra smiled faintly. They have no choice. The evidence is undeniable. The raiders are a real threat, and now the council knows it. But will they act in time? Jake asked, his brow furrowed in concern. We'll make sure they do, Lyra replied, her voice resolute. This is just the beginning. Together, we'll stop the raiders and protect the galaxy. Jake felt a renewed sense of purpose. They had faced betrayal, danger, and uncertainty, but they had emerged stronger. And now, with the Council's attention on the looming threat, they had a chance to make a real difference. As their ship drifted through the stars, Jake, Lyra, and Maria knew their fight was far from over. But they were ready for whatever came next. Together, they would face the final battle, determined to protect their home and the entire galaxy from the chaos that threatened to consume it. The showdown had begun, and this time, they wouldn't back down.